Hey guys, Tarke here, and today I'm going to attempt to talk about and tackle the whole streamer problem. Do streamers have a say in balance? Should we have a say in balance? Are all streamers out of touch? I've tried recording this video like 5 times now. I'm just going to sit in my hideout, walk around a little bit. When I play, I get too distracted. If I watch VODs, I get too distracted. Also, just wanted to apologise for any background noise. Gorilla's still here. She's playing Witcher 3 on my old computer. It's a bit loud. So if there's any annoying noise in the background other than my voice, I do apologise. Right. One other thing that I do want to get out of the way, just because I think it's something worth mentioning, because it's something that often gets thrown around in the comments. I don't actually make a living from streaming on YouTube. I'm someone who, due to health, currently isn't able to work. I've moved back home with my mum. I do this because it gives me something to do. You guys seem to enjoy it. It is a hobby. The only reason why I stress that is sometimes after certain videos or podcasts and kind of controversial topics, people will dismiss certain arguments because they'll be like, oh, you're just doing this because it's your job. I don't treat this as a job. This is just something I do and spend most of my time on because it keeps me somewhat sane. Right. I can't speak for other streamers, and also just for anyone who wants to get into streaming. You don't earn any money doing this until you have like 2, 3, 4, 5 times my viewer count. Just for the record, to be completely open. Right. Now, from the point of view of a moderately sized PoE streamer, who hosts a podcast who often gets accused of massive circle jerk, should streamers have an opinion or a say on balance? Obviously, everyone is entitled to opinion. Some people's opinion are more relevant than others. An example of that would be I never boss. If you ever hear me talking about Uber at Zeri, I'm talking out of my depth and you should ignore anything I have to say on that. That being said, a lot of us have been playing this game for like 5+ years and come at it from the point of view of people who've played this game for a really long time. We know what we would like to see improved, and we just want the game to be as good as it can be. And GGG are very hard-working developers who are very hard to understand sometimes because of their long-term goals. An example of that would be the whole surprise 10x thing. There was like a solid year or so of people complaining very loudly in the community about the removal of cruel. Should they remove difficulties? Is the early game getting too tedious, etc.? And then lo and behold, GGG just goes boom, you know, on the table, 10x. And we're all like, oh my god, right? So, one other important thing that I want to put in there, GGG are amazing. They also work ridiculously way too hard, and they do surprise us. So anything, any opinion that any streamer has to be taken with a slight grain of salt, because we aren't mind readers. We don't know what they're working on. Right, okay. Now, one of the big things when it comes to the whole PoE community at large versus streamers, or when it comes to regarding streamers' opinions, is, well, you guys are so out of touch with the average player. You know, you play this day in, day out, day in, day out. Of course, you're going to have weird expectations when it comes to Path of Exile. Which is kind of a fair remark. Although, to sort of counter that, you do need to keep in mind that just because we play the game a lot doesn't mean that we aren't aware of some base issues. And also, you know, for myself, I always have a few hundred people watching when I'm streaming. Most of my viewers aren't amazing at the game. Sorry, guys. I don't even think I'm that amazing at the game. I just have a lot of time to play, so I can sort of even it out with that. And most streamers get, like, flooded with questions from people who have never played Path of Exile before. Most streamers are actually very concerned, more so than the average player, about the beginner user experience, because we're constantly interacting with people who've never played Path of Exile before, are very new to Path of Exile, constantly ask the same questions. How do I set up my Atlas? How should I do this? How should I do X? What is best class? That's the one that we often get a lot. I've picked which, what is build? You know, stuff like that. So, even though you might see someone like Cute Dog doing like the most intense, you know, full headhunter, juiced up mapping, you know, super efficiency, most of his viewers aren't like that, and he will be constantly bombarded with questions and the opinions of people who've never played PoE before, people who've only played for a week or two, and because of that, you pick up on a lot of what the general player base is saying. But one thing to also caveat that, you know, there's a very big difference between the average person who just plays Path of Exile than the person who's dedicated enough to then seek out the streams and the guides, and then the person who's dedicated enough to then go onto the Reddit, comment on the Reddit, and then the kind of people who are like dedicated enough to then seek out the podcast, etc. That is something worth mentioning. You know, Reddit is a minority. It's not the vast player base. Streamers are obviously a minority. We are not the vast player base. There is this massive, just like, wad of people who completely ignore all of this like social third-party aspects of PoE and are just quite happily just playing the game day in, day out, right? Waterfall makes funny noises. Okay. That being said, that doesn't make any one group or any one like subset less relevant. But when it comes to streamers, it's often a lot easier to know when they're talking complete rubbish or when they're kind of coming it from like, oh, I should maybe listen to you. So, for example, if you look at someone like Ziz, right? Ziz is someone who, if anyone plays PoE like a job, it's Ziz, right? When the recent XP change happened, where they made it slower to go from 95 to 100, he was actually one of the people who was most upset by the XP change, even though he's actually someone who benefits a lot from it. The reason why I say he benefits a lot from the nerf to the XP speed, like the game getting to 100, is he's someone who races. Ziz often pushes for the first 100 in the given league, hardcore temp league, and by GGG making that final grind harder, it edges out some of his competition. Yet he was one of the people who was loudest and most vocal against this change for that exact reason, even though it directly benefited him. So just because someone, you know, plays the game for a living, or just because someone is the super, you know, hardcore elite da-da-da, doesn't mean that they're completely oblivious to the person you're playing on a very limited time schedule. Not only do streamers directly interact with all of their viewers, a lot of us interact with each other. So, you know, for example, I don't play softcore. I've tried playing softcore multiple times. I just can't last more than a week. It just doesn't work in my headspace. Yeah, I've hosted this, you know, PoE podcast for such a long time now, and I regularly have softcore players coming on, both extreme high-end players and low-end players, etc. And most of my IRL friends who play PoE, who I talk to, all play very casually from a softcore point of view. I've actually got, you know, quite a decent-ish idea, I think, of the softcore experience, just because of, you know, the interactions I've had and the conversations I've had and, you know, that sort of third-party access, right? There are just some people who, if they say something, I just kind of bow down to them. So Carve would be an example of one of those players. Carve is someone who's just incredibly knowledgeable, excuse me, when it comes to Path of Exile. And when I have, like, an opinion on game design, one thing I often do is if I feel very strongly about something, you know, be it if Carve is in my chat or I randomly go into stream, I'm like, yo, Carve, what do you feel about this? And I kind of, like, feel out my opinion on him. If me and Carve agree on something, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I'm coming at this from the right point of view. If I think something and Carve wildly disagrees, and people who I respect wildly disagree with me, I'll be like, you know what, Tarke, maybe you're not that informed on this. Maybe sit this one out. Maybe in this case, you know, you just don't know what the hell you're talking about. Let's just bow down to... I don't think that true works. Let's just bow down to other people, right? And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people in the community, because of how tight-knit the PoE scene actually is, we can sort of offset our opinions and, you know, ask other people. That's something which is really great about it, and that's why I think that, you know, the PoE podcasts and discussions are important. I wish there were more out there. You know, one of my favourite things to do when it comes to just viewing, you know, Path of Exile is watching stuff like Coffee Talk, because it's just other people's opinions, people who I really respect. Excuse the squeaky chair in the background. Fuck's sake. Because I just really like Carb, I really like Niggy, and I like where they're coming out from the game. Right. Another thing that you do need to kind of keep in mind is some streamers do have alpha access. You know, they might have some special privileges. And while, for the record, I don't, feels bad, man. And while they won't ever break that, sometimes that will, you know, view their opinion. I'm sure you've been in the example, you know, you're watching Ziggy stream or you're watching Baycast, and he's got that little smile that he has. You're like, he knows something. You know, some streamers are more informed than others. I thought I had D&D on. Oh, well, we're getting a little sale. I need the currency because I'm a filthy casual. I really haven't played the game at all this week. That's also another thing worth mentioning. So currently, I am playing the game super casual. What I would consider to be like the average thing. For the last 2 weeks while Grill's been visiting, I've done like 3 very short, like 2-3 hour streams. I've maybe played 2 hours every couple of days, right? So this league, for example, I feel like I've got a pretty fair idea of what the average dude is doing, if not slightly less than that, because if you look at my atlas, I've done a little bit of Shape Channel. That's it! I really haven't done that much this league. Whereas in Mayhem, you know, I was doing the whole let's compete and get top 10 100 and all of that stuff. When you have people who've played the game for so long, over such a long period of time, all in direct communication with one another, you know, you fill out different branches, and then because of that, you can stay somewhat informed. Now, just because someone did a race once doesn't mean that 20 years later they can have a strong opinion on racing, but, you know, if someone's recently done a lot of racing, then you can be like, okay, you might be somewhat relevant to today's discussion. And, yeah, I don't know, I feel like the whole us v them mentality, which sometimes seems to happen with like the YouTube comments and the podcasts, I really don't think that it's completely fair or completely reasonable. Just because someone plays the game more than you do doesn't make their opinion irrelevant. In much the same case that just because someone plays the game less than you doesn't make their opinion completely irrelevant. But at the end of the day, what's most important is the long-term health of the game. And a small example I'll give for that, and a case where, you know, it's kind of like, well, what's the bigger picture here, is actually Voltaxic. So, the Voltaxic change happened, I believe it was around about Prophecy League-ish. The whole Poison Ignite nerf had been long coming. People have been talking about it for quite a long time. People were expecting different things. We always knew that at some point they would have to gut double dipping. For anyone who started playing the game after 3.0, don't worry, people who played before that, you know what I'm talking about, right? Poison Ignites were completely and utterly broken. And the meta was very dominated by stuff like Volspark, and a lot of it had to do with this item, Voltaxic. And what Voltaxic did is it was a unique bow which converted 100% of your lightning damage to chaos damage. Poison was very powerful at the time. You convert all your lightning to chaos, making you reflect immune. Reflect was a big issue back then, and then you could do crazy stuff with poison, and it was a really big deal. Now, Consuming Dark was another main offender, which did the same thing via to chaos conversion, and GGG nerfed the values. They nerfed the conversion rates. I mean, you could no longer get 100% conversion just using these base uniques. At the time, I was very loudly against this change. And I was coming from the point of view of the super long term. Because I was going, okay, I've played this game for long enough now that I think I know what's going to happen. I think what will happen is they'll nerf Voltaxic, it'll be a short-term fix, but Poison will still be an intrinsically broken mechanic. Later down the line, they're going to have to completely rework the core mechanic. And when they do that, Voltaxic is going to be a meaningless item. It will have no place in the meta, and it will just be completely outdated. At the time, people were saying, Tarke, you're being stupid, you're being elitist, you're just trying to protect this item because you use it a lot, blah, 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 you don't know what you're talking about, you're being stupid, you're an idiot, you're wrong. Now, lo and behold, X many leagues later, they then completely destroyed double dipping, and now Voltaxic is meaningless. Whenever you try and make a Voltaxic build, you know, you just put in any other item and it's like, oh, my build's better now. And that'd be an example of where you have And a lot of streamers disagree with me. I think I was actually in the big minority. I remember, I think, was it State of Exile? I can't remember. But at some point I was talking to Ziggy about it. And he was like, no, I think it should happen. And he was very much for it. And there were a few streamers who were very much for it. A lot of my long-term viewers were kind of like, yeah, no, I think it's good because it preserves the identity of ailments and elements. That was another big thing at the time. People were very concerned with element identity. But I was like, no, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter, guys. And now we're in a situation now where elements don't really have any identity because you get a random shaped item which converts everything to everything. And then it's kind of like, why can't we still have Voltaxic? And sometimes I think it's important to ignore the general hive mentality and ignore what's directly present and just kind of look forward a bit. A similar thing kind of happened with the patch notes for this patch. The patch notes for 3.1, in my opinion, were a little disappointing in some regards. I'm really enjoying this patch, by the way. But the patch notes, I was kind of like, oh, I wish we'd gotten more. Now, we do know now that we are having apparently a big Ascendancy rework coming next patch. And that'd again be an example of GGG knows more than we do. So you always have to take whatever a streamer says with a grain of salt, because GGG might have a fix to the thing the streamer's complaining about in the works, it's just not come out yet. But anyway, so one of the things which really got me going, and I made a video on it which got a bit of a buzz at the time, was the whole +1 range to Static Strike. This really irritated me. So I tried playing a Static Strike character in 3.0. Static Strike actually has very good damage, is actually a really solid skill for single target. Mechanically it kind of works. I don't actually think name locking is that bad with Static Strike. The main issue with it is their AoE is just so small that you can't use it for reliable map clear. It just doesn't have the AoE. It has the damage, it feels punchy, it's good, it doesn't have enough AoE to map clear smoothly. You'd be better off using any other skill. And then in the patch notes it said, yo, we're adding +1 range to Static Strike. And I was like, guys, this is stupid, it doesn't do anything. Everyone's like, Tarke, but they're adding Ancestral. Cool. It's amazing. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're coming at this from the point of view of the, 0.01% racing to 100, blah, blah, blah. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up, Tarke. You're being an idiot. You're being an idiot. You're being an idiot. Right? I had lots of really negative feedback to that video. How many people are playing Static Strike right now? Not that many. Few people have tried it and gone, yeah, this isn't very good, actually. And that'd be a case of, you just give it a little bit more AoE. And I realize I've kind of gone off topic now, so I'll try and bring it back in. But yeah. Should streamers affect balance? I think completely ignoring certain streamers is a mistake. I don't think just owning a Twitch account or owning a YouTube channel suddenly makes your opinion more valid than other people. But if you have access to people who play a lot and give feedback, you should use it. And I think that GGG does use it, for the record. If you have top racers, and I often go to racers as an example because the whole sextant issue at the moment. A lot of people are on the whole sextant thing, like hating on sextants. A lot of people are like, why are you hating on sextants? Sextants are good, da 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 da. And without getting to the whole sextant argument again, in my opinion, if some of the best players in the game agree, and I don't include myself in that at all before someone comes to that, I'm talking about people like Steel, people like Ziz, those guys, they're like, yeah, I think this is a bit too good, this could probably do with reworking. I think in that case you probably should maybe respect their opinion a little bit more than, some random dude on Reddit. If for example, you're in a situation where Steel, Carve, Ziz, who else I really respect in the community, Cute Dog, if they're in a situation they're like, yo, this system's really, really bad, and I'm like, no, keep it, keep it, keep it. Listen to those guys. I guess a good actually recent example of this would be Reflect. I feel very strongly about Reflect, and I was actually one of the people who was really annoyed when they removed Reflect, and that was an example where sometimes you do need to ignore certain people, and it is sometimes awkward when it comes, talk about game balance from the point of view of someone who does play the game in hardcore, who's played the game from beta, not closed. I played open betas when I started, I think March 2013, I think. So coming up to 5 years now. Sometimes I do just have to say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be listened to on this one. I think I even said that in the last Bay class. I think I said, you know what, maybe I'm just out of touch. Because I'm someone who plays hardcore. Hardcore is by far the minority now. Nearly everyone plays softcore. And maybe that just means that a lot of the softcore streamers or a lot of the softcore players, their opinions are more valid. Or more applicable to the player base at large than someone like myself or someone like Rise. And I don't know why I just searched Rise into my thing. I wanted like a boulder to put a little rock in my wall. You know, should someone who only plays SSF, you know, should his opinion be listened to over someone who, you know, over the vast majority of players? Probably not. Does that mean that you should completely ignore, you know, someone like Rise or someone like Carb's opinion? No, because they've played the game for a really long time. They're generally pretty intelligent dudes. And if they think something, it's probably worth at least listening to their point of view rather than completely dismissing. I think that's kind of the big point I'm trying to make this video, is just because someone plays the game differently to you doesn't mean you should completely ignore them. But giving that, you know, if next time, you know, a YouTube video comes out or a podcast comes out or someone disagrees with you on Reddit, try and give a good argument against it. And I guess that's how I'll just finish this video. So since recently, you know, I've been one of the big, like, anti-sextant dudes. If you're someone who's super pro the current state of sextants, you don't think they should be changed at all, and you disagree with me, next time you make a comment, address that. Say why you think the sextants should stay the way they are, why the game is perfect the way it is. Not, shut up, you're a streamer, stuff you come at it from a blah 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 minority. So yeah, I don't know. That was a massive ramble. Hopefully that addressed something. I'll be back to my normal stream schedule from the 24th onwards. I'm currently playing KB Mines again, because KB. Sorry for a bit of a rant. I just kind of was thinking about this video a lot recently, or at least these topics, and I'm curious on what you guys think. Yeah. Gee, I love you. I think we're saying happy birthday to Bex or something according to Reddit, so happy birthday, support people. You probably aren't watching this, but if you are, PogChamp. Yeah. Also, I really like my MTX. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.